Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. Here we will take up the news articles from The Hindu and discuss them as per the demands of UPSC Civil Services exam. The topics for today's discussion are listed on your screen. Let us begin our discussion. The first topic of today's discussion is based on this news, which featured at page number 20 in Indian Express. It basically talks about the Women Reservation Bill and the delimitation exercise. And the context of this news is that 126th Amendment Bill of 2023, which is also known as Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, which was recently passed by Lok Sabha, proposed 33% reservation for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies. And the bill specifies that a new law will be enforced following a delimitation process and the publication of census data of 2021. This means that reservation provision is not an immediate process and it will depend on two steps. The first one is delimitation exercise and the second one is 2021 census data. So, the earliest women reservation in Lok Sabha and state assemblies can take effect in 2029 elections. The topic of reservation and delimitation is relevant for General Studies paper 2 and it comes under the theme of Parliament and its functioning and the issues arising out of these. The focus of today's discussion will be on delimitation, and we will try to analyze each and every dimension associated with delimitation. First of all, let us understand what the delimitation is. Delimitation is a process of redrawing the boundaries of constituencies or electoral areas. And why this process is being carried out? It is being carried out periodically to ensure that each constituency has roughly equal number of voters, which is based on the principle of one vote, one value. So, to uphold the democratic principle of equality, delimitation exercise is being conducted. Further, after each census, readjustment is to be made for the allocation of seats in the Lok Sabha to the states and the division of each state into the territorial constituencies. These are the two components of delimitation. Further, Parliament is empowered to determine the authority and the manner in which is to be made. So, it is the Parliament who has the authority to decide how the delimitation exercise will be conducted and which authority will conduct this particular exercise. And why this exercise is necessary? It is because the population distribution changes over a period of time. And due to that, some areas might experience a significant growth of population and other states or areas might face a decline, which may lead to a situation where certain constituencies have a larger or smaller number of voters as compared to others, which invariably leads to the imbalance in the representation. In order to tackle this particular issue, delimitation exercise is being conducted. Here we have briefly discussed about the delimitation and its objective. Now let us have a look at the commission or the authority which is being empowered to conduct this particular exercise. Here we are talking about the Delimitation Commission. First of all, it is appointed by the President of India. Just keep a tap on such information as it can be asked in prelims exam also. It is the President, not the Parliament, who appoints the Delimitation Commission. And another important information associated with this particular commission is its composition. It includes the Chief Election Commissioner, retired Judge of Supreme Court, and the Election Commissioner of concerned state. So these are the members of this particular commission. And another important fact is that orders of Delimitation Commission are final and it cannot be called in question before any court of law, whether it is High Court or Supreme Court, in order to prevent the indefinite delays in the elections. This power has been given to Delimitation Commission so that the process of elections can be concluded in a smooth way. As we have discussed about the limited powers of courts, what about the Lok Sabha and state assemblies? The copies of the orders of Delimitation Commission are laid before the House of People, which is the Lok Sabha, and state legislative assemblies which are concerned. But they cannot modify any of the provisions made by Delimitation Commission, which highlights that it is a powerful commission and its orders are final and cannot be called in question before any court or Lok Sabha or State Legislative Assembly. And how many times this exercise is conducted in India? Since independence, only 4 times the Delimitation Commission have been constituted at national level. First in 1952, second in 1963, third in 1973, and last in 2002. It is only the 4 times the Delimitation Commission have been constituted since independence. Just keep a tab on this information as it can be asked as one of the statement in UPSC prelims exam. Now we will discuss why delimitation is considered as a point of contention among different political parties. As we have discussed, delimitation leads to alterations in overall number of parliamentary and assembly seats. And the delimitation process that followed in 1951 census resulted in an increase in Lok Sabha seat which rises from 489 to 494. And this number continued to grow to 522 after 1961 census. And eventually it stabilized at 543 after the 1971 census. And this increase in number of seats and their distribution among the states has raised concerns among different political parties and states. For example, particularly in North India, which has the lower population control efforts, they received a larger share of Lok Sabha seats, and on the other hand, southern states which were actively promoted the family planning faced a reduction in the allocation of seats to Lok Sabha. Hence, the ramification of delimitation on the distribution of seats remains a source of political disputes and controversies. And in 1976, the Indira Gandhi-led government introduced 42nd Amendment Act to address the political concerns associated with delimitation process. And this amendment suspended the redrawing of seat boundaries and seat allocation until 2001 by justifying it as a means to promote family planning. And the freeze on the number of seats in parliament and state assemblies was later extended in 2001 by NDA-1 government, which was led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And the rationale behind this particular extension was to support the national population policy, which focuses on the stabilization of population. And this particular extension was made till the year 2020-26. This is how the delimitation has become a source of political dispute and controversy, and various governments like UPA and NDA has taken steps to address the political concerns associated with this particular exercise. Now we will shift our focus to the significance of delimitation in India. The first argument in this respect is balancing the political power. Delimitation can alter the distribution of political power among different regions and communities by redrawing the constituencies, and it can impact the electoral prospects of political parties, candidates, and potentially impact the political dynamics and power balance within a particular state or region. For example, in 2008 delimitation exercise, Jharkhand witnessed a significant realignment of political power when the boundaries of constituencies were redrawn. You can mention this example while quoting this particular argument. The second argument is addressing the demographic shift. In 2002, constituencies in states like Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu were redefined to address the substantial population growth in urban areas. And it paved the way for better reflection of population changes and ensured that the urban areas are adequately represented in the legislative bodies so that their specific concerns can be addressed adequately. The third argument is minority representation. The delimitation exercise have been instrumental in ensuring the better representation for minority communities. And in 2008 delimitation exercise, constituencies in the regions with significant concentration of minority communities such as Mallapuram in Kerala were adjusted to ensure that their political interests were adequately represented and their concerns will be addressed. Further, it also paved the way for enhancing the gender representation in legislative bodies. Through delimitation exercise, the participation of women in the field of politics can be ensured, and it will result into the formulation of gender specific policies which will be beneficial for the empowerment of women. And lastly, it ensures fair representation. The delimitation aims to ensure fair representation by readjusting the boundaries of constituencies based on the population changes, and it helps in balancing the number of votes per representative, which ensures and uphold the democratic principle of one person, one vote. Hence, it will ensure equality in the domain of political sphere in Indian democracy. Here we have broadly discussed the significance of delimitation. Now, what are the issues associated with this particular exercise? The first issue is decreased representation of states that have achieved the population stabilization, which are mostly the states in the southern region, such as Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And it may result into the increased representation of states that are still experiencing the population growth. Hence, it does not seem a fair system and may lead to the imbalance in the representation of different states in Lok Sabha. And the next issue associated with delimitation exercise is its implementation, and it can be due to the logistical and administrative issues. For example, the delimitation exercise in Jammu and Kashmir is facing delays and obstacles due to its unique circumstances and complexities such as internal security challenges. Now, what can be the way forward for this particular issue? Firstly, we can learn from the best practices which are being followed in the Western countries, such as European Parliament, which is following a Cambridge Compromise. It is a mathematical model which is providing an objective formula for the allocation of seats. So, the Delimitation Commission of India can develop a customized model based on Cambridge Compromise. The second one is stakeholders approach. And in this strategy, the Commission can conduct consultations with the different stakeholders such as political parties and the general public by seeking their inputs and objections regarding the proposed constituency boundaries, which will ensure transparency and public participation in the process of delimitation. So with this point, we will conclude our discussion to this particular topic. A quick recap to our discussion. First of all, we discussed the context and its relevance for General Studies Paper 2. After that, we briefly discussed what is delimitation and the Delimitation Commission, and why this exercise has become a source of contention between the political parties and states. After that, we discussed the significance of delimitation, the issues associated with it, and finally, the roadmap for future. The next topic of today's discussion is based on this news, which featured at page number 12 in Indian Express. And the topic says Diaspora, Distrust and Distance. And the context of this news is that Canada and India are experiencing a significant deterioration in their relations, which is happening mainly due to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's accusation in front of Canadian lawmakers that the Indian agents were responsible for killing of Khalistani active Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And this accusation has led to the expulsion of diplomats and has pushed relations to a new low. The broad theme of this particular topic is related to diaspora, which is important for General Studies Paper 2 under the theme of international relations. And in 2023 mains exam, UPSC asked a direct question on diaspora. Indian diaspora has scaled new heights in the West. Describe its economic and political benefits for India. And you need to answer this question in 150 words. So from this point of view, this topic is relevant for UPSC Civil Services exam. And today we will try to discuss the significance of diaspora and the issues faced by them. First of all, we will discuss the significance of diaspora. The first dimension is economic contribution. Diaspora communities can be a vital source for remittances and investments, specifically the foreign direct investment, which helps in contributing to the economic development of the country. And it can also help in facilitation of trade between the countries. Hence, they serve as an important economic resource, especially for the developing countries. The second point under this heading is the brain gain. It is a phenomena which occurs when the migrants learn skills and obtain education abroad and then transfer their knowledge and skills back to their homeland. And this knowledge transfer can be strategically utilized by home country to mitigate the brain drain effect. And it will also help in providing skills to the young people who are motivated to go abroad for better economic opportunities. And a classic example to this particular phenomena is India's IT sector. The second dimension is political effect. The diaspora groups often engage in human rights activism, which specifically draws attention to the issues such as refugee rights, minority rights, and social justice. And they are trying to utilize this particular opportunity through the mobilization of people. And another point in this particular dimension is advocacy and lobbying. The diaspora communities often advocate for the interests of their home countries or regions, and they may lobby for specific issues such as the policy changes, foreign support, or the reforms in the institutions which are working at the global level, such as World Bank and IMF. And moreover, the Indian diaspora today occupies a top position in the foreign countries. For example, Kamala Harris in US and Rishi Sunak in UK. And these are the indicative of India's growing economic influence over the world. And a testimony of the same in the past can be given Indo-US nuclear deal, in which the diaspora communities played an important role. These are the two important dimensions on which UPSC asked a direct question in 2023 mains exam. The third dimension is foreign policy. The institutionalization of diaspora diplomacy in the recent times is indicative of the important role played by diaspora in the foreign policy formulation, and it acts as an instrument of soft power and reducing the need of hard power. Here we have briefly discussed the significance of diaspora. Now let us try to understand the issues which are associated with diaspora. The first one is policy for diaspora. Despite their socio-economic contributions to the development of country, there is no clear policy on diaspora in India. Hence, it is a major issue which limits the potential of diaspora for the development of the country. The second one is database on Indian diaspora. Ministry of External Affairs does not have an updated data on Indian diaspora. And moreover, the registration with Indian embassies is on voluntary basis. And due to the absence of such database, the welfare scheme with respect to diaspora have not been implemented properly. The third one is changing political dynamics. As we have witnessed the recent clash between India and Canada over the killing of Khalistani leader, it is going to impact the future prospects of the communities who are living there or the people who are planning to go to that particular country for better economic opportunity. And it will majorly impact Punjabis who are majorly settled in Canada. The next issue is multiple portals for grievance redressal. Government has formalized various portals such as eMigrate and CP-Grams to resolve the grievances of Indian nationals abroad. And these multiple portals may delay the resolution of grievances of Indians who are living abroad. And it also leads to the duplication of effort. The next one is rehabilitation of workers. As we have witnessed during pandemic, many Indians who were working in different countries have lost their jobs. And after the pandemic eased, only few workers managed to return to their places of employment abroad. And to accommodate the people who were left behind, there is a need of rehabilitation scheme to ensure livelihood security for workers who have lost their jobs. And the next one is skilling of potential migrant workers. As the international labor market has now become demand driven compared to the earlier supply demand system, the skilling of potential migrant workers is a challenge. And to match up the international labor system, we need a specific policy and regulatory mechanism for skilling the migrant workers. And the next issue is with respect to students who are stuck in the conflict regions such as Ukraine or during pandemic in other countries. And due to that, they were unable to resume their professional courses or complete their internship programs. Hence, there is a need to focus on this particular section in order to reduce the dilemma on their future. The next issue is NRI marriages. There have been increasing cases of women being deserted or the issues of fraud and harassment have been witnessed. And in this particular respect, the Registration of Marriage of Non-Resident Indian Bill of 2019, which has not been enacted, is a major loophole. The next one is one-stop centers. Long back, the Ministry of External Affairs had decided to establish overseas centers to help the distressed people, but it has not been established in many of the countries. The next one is rising conflicts and instability due to the Shia Sunni conflicts and radical Islamism, which is directly impacting the safety of the people who are living in those areas. Further, the regressive and medieval policies, for example, the kafala labor system, in which the employers are seizing the travel documents of their employees who have migrated from other countries. And such practices are widespread in Gulf countries. And lastly, the discriminatory practices, which are still prevalent due to racism or the colonial mindset. And it is also impacting the cultural integration among different communities. So after discussing the issues with diaspora, what can be the way forward to resolve their issues? First of all, we need to have a robust and updated database. And in this respect, Indian embassies should encourage the diaspora to register themselves, which will also allow the ministry to effectively implement the welfare schemes which are being made for the NRIs. Further, MEA should complete its consultation and enact a law for the benefit of NRI women. Thirdly, for grievance redressal, CP Gram's portal is the quickest way to interact with the state government or district police, but it is not popular overseas. And it is recommended that Ministry of External Affairs should publicize this portal so that it can be used to resolve the grievances effectively. Further, MEA should draft a comprehensive rehabilitation scheme in coordination with concerned ministries such as the Labour Ministry, Finance Ministry, etc. and other stakeholders. Further, we need to skill the people who are aspiring to find better job opportunities abroad. And there is a need to improve the quality of domestic skilling and standardizing curriculum across the country to ensure that the migrant workers can go abroad and secure employment with better wages. And in this respect, the initiative led by WEF named by Reskilling Revolution can be a game changer. Further, government should consider setting up of special economic zones exclusively for the projects to be set up by NRIs and person of Indian origins, along with considering the special infrastructure bonds for attracting NRI investments like done by Israel. And there is also a need to negotiate a standard labor export agreement, which will help in monitoring and supervision of overseas workers by our missions. And lastly, there is a need to encourage the cultural integration and inclusivity among the diaspora communities by organizing cultural events such as Diwali, language programs, and awareness campaigns to combat the colonial mindset and discriminatory practices. So, in this way, we can plan a broad strategy for the welfare of Indian diaspora. A quick recap to our discussion. First of all, we have discussed the context, its relevance for General Studies Paper 2. We have seen a previous year question. We have discussed the significance of diaspora for India and the issues associated with diaspora and a way forward for the welfare of Indian diaspora. Moving on to the next topic, which is based on this news, which featured at page number 12 in The Hindu. It basically talks about the outer space. As the space is a common heritage of humankind, countries, particularly India, should push towards making a comprehensive law to govern the outer space in order to explore the resources in the outer space. This topic is relevant for General Studies Paper 3, in which science and technology and the awareness in the field of space is directly mentioned. In today's discussion, we will try to analyze what is outer space and what are the laws which are governing the outer space. So, from the perspective of an individual on Earth, the outer space is the zone that occurs about 100 kilometers above the planet. It is the expanse that exists beyond Earth and between the celestial bodies. Further, outer space is not empty, but it contains low density of particles which are predominantly the plasma of hydrogen and helium. It also includes the electromagnetic radiation, magnetic fields, neutrinos, cosmic rays, and dust. It is not an empty space, but it contains multiple particles which are generally of low density. And lastly, the Kármán line, which is above 100 kilometers from the sea level, which is conventionally used as the start of outer space in space treaties and for aerospace record keeping. Just keep this information in mind as it is an important fact which can be asked in prelims exam also. As we have talked about Kármán line, let us see where it exists. Here you can see the Kármán line. It exists between thermosphere and mesosphere, and it is above the 100 kilometer from the sea level. Hence, Kármán line exists between thermosphere and mesosphere. Try to remember this piece of information. Now we will discuss the treaties and agreements which are related to outer space. The first one is the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Now this treaty lays down the principles which governs the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, including moon and other celestial bodies. The second one is the Rescue Agreement 1968. It basically deals with the rescue of astronauts, the return of astronauts, and the return of objects which are launched in outer space. The third one is Liability Convention. It is an international convention which places liability for damage caused by the space objects. And under this particular convention, countries can be held accountable for causing damage to the outer space. The fourth one is Registration Convention of 1976. It is the convention on registration of objects which are launched into the outer space. So, there is a need to register the objects which the countries are launching to the outer space, whether it is for research purpose or the exploitation of minerals. And the last one is the Moon Agreement of 1979. It is the agreement which governs the activities on moon and other celestial bodies. And one important fact which is associated with these particular agreements is India is a signatory to all these 5 treaties, but we have only ratified the first 4 and did not ratify the Moon Agreement. Just try to remember this piece of information as it will be useful for prelims exam. Now we will take our discussion to the Outer Space Treaty and we will see its provisions. It is formally known as Treaty on Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and the Use of Outer Space, including Moon and other celestial bodies. Hence, it is a treaty which deals with the exploration activities of outer space, including Moon and other celestial bodies. And it was adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 1967. And it also entered into force in the same year. And as of August 2023, 114 countries are party to this treaty, including US, Russia, India, and China. It is also an important fact to remember. Now we will discuss the key principles which are outlined in the Outer Space Treaty. The first one is peaceful use of outer space. The treaty emphasizes that the outer space should be used for peaceful purposes and it prohibits the placement of weapons, whether it is a nuclear weapon or any other weapon of mass destruction. So the first principle is peaceful use of outer space. The second principle is freedom of exploration. The states which are party to this treaty have the freedom to explore the outer space and they are not limited by the territorial boundaries. However, they are prohibited from claiming sovereignty over any part of the outer space, including the celestial bodies like moon or other planets. So, it is only talking about exploration and not sovereignty. The third principle is prohibition of national appropriation. The Outer Space Treaty explicitly states that the outer space, which includes moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by any means, which means that no state can claim ownership or territorial rights over any part of the outer space. The last one is preventing harmful contamination. The states are required to take measures to prevent the harmful contamination of space and celestial bodies. And this provision was included to avoid the interference with any future research or the environment of outer space. Here we have broadly discussed the key principles which are outlined in the Outer Space Treaty. Now we will discuss the limitations of Outer Space Treaty. The first one is It does not ban the military activities within space or the weaponization of space, except the placement of weapons of mass destruction in space. Hence, it only prohibits the placement of weapons and not the military activities within space. It is a major limitation of the Outer Space Treaty. The second one is it is mostly a non-armament treaty, which means that it only deals with the peaceful exploration of resources of outer space, and it offers insufficient regulations for newer space activities such as lunar and asteroid mining. Hence, it has limited control over these activities. As we have discussed the limitations and key principles of Outer Space Treaty, now we will discuss why there is a need for better governance of outer space. The first argument in this respect is outdated space laws. One of the major issues associated with Outer Space Treaty or other space treaties which are dealing with the outer space, they do not have any dispute settlement mechanism, and they are mostly silent on collisions, debris, and they offer insufficient guidance on the interference with other space assets. Hence, it is a major issue with respect to outer space regulation. The second one is state-centric legislation. The legal framework which is guiding the activities in the outer space is state-centric, and it places responsibilities on states alone. However, the non-state actors are now in the race for the exploration of minerals in the outer space. Hence, in order to manage the activities of state and non-state actors, we need a comprehensive law to govern the outer space. The third one is misuse of strategic position. The reliance of militaries on satellite systems means that the space assets become the potential targets. For example, satellite constellations are commercial, but governments can use their data to monitor military movements. Hence, it creates unequal ground for countries who do not have any satellite system in the outer space to monitor the activities of militaries. The fourth one is increased space debris. The issue of overcrowded and congested space is becoming real. As we all know about Kessler syndrome, where a collision between two space objects could set off a cascading chain reaction. And given the speed at which space objects travel, any collision between two objects could set in motion a disaster turn of events, and which can create an unmanageable amount of space debris. The next one is technological advances. As the population of Earth is growing consistently, there is a need of resources to manage the population, and technological advances have made it possible to mine the resources from outer space. The role of space in different areas of interest, such as the satellite data, which is essential for mapping and monitoring the natural resources, disaster management, tracking and navigation, and identifying the algal blooms. Hence, the role of space has increased tremendously in the recent years. And to manage this particular thing, we need a better and robust governance system to deal with the outer space, so that every country can be benefited equally. A quick recap to our discussion. First of all, we have discussed the context and its relevance for General Studies Paper 3. We have seen what is outer space and the agreements and conventions related to outer space. We have briefly discussed about Outer Space Treaty of 1967, the key principles which are outlined in this particular treaty, its limitations, and finally the need for better governance of outer space.